Caller, click now.
Take your hands off of me.
Dan Riley.
Unless you intend to arrest me, don't push me, please. I know you won't, but don't push me. Take your hands off of me unless you plan to arrest me.
Wait a minute.
Wait a minute. Well, Walter, as you can see...
I don't know what's going on, but these are security people apparently around Dan.
Can't get enough of that video. That's CBS newsman Dan Rather getting smacked around, really, at the Democratic Convention in Chicago back in 1968. How times have changed. Conventions are now really tightly scripted infomercials. There's a greater chance probably of the Mars rover finding life than a fight breaking out on the convention floor. So coming to us tonight from Houston to tell us when and why conventions became a little more predictable is presidential historian Douglas Brinkley. He's also a professor of history at Rice University, author of the new book Cronkite, a biography of the country's most respected newsman. Douglas, welcome back inside the War Room.
Thanks for having me on, Governor.
You bet. So we just watched that tape from 1968. Did 1968 signal the end of the unscripted convention?
No, it was part of the end. 1972, in Miami, George McGovern ended up giving his acceptance speech at about 3 in the morning. And that's not very good for ratings. But after 72, you really started getting this becoming a heavily choreographed affair now, right down to the exact seconds things are timed. And it's simply to get as many people to watch as possible. It's the last moment that Barack Obama and Mitt Romney are going to be able to have 70 million, 80 million people watching them with a kind of unfiltered message. The debates will be big, but you can't get your full message out. Conventions, you can.
Yeah, conventions used to be a place, as you've alluded, where real decisions were made, like who would be the vice presidential nominee. Tell us about the 1960 Democratic Convention, how Senator John F. Kennedy ended up picking Lyndon B. Johnson. Tell us that story.
Well, there was great speculation in 1960 of who Kennedy should pick. As well documented now, Bobby Kennedy could not stand Lyndon Johnson. But at the last minute, Kennedy realized he needed LBJ to carry Texas, and it sure was a good idea. There's a lot of evidence to say Richard Nixon would have won in 60. So there was some drama with the VP then. In 1956, Adlai Stevenson left. Who would be the vice president? Kind of up in the air. But since then, these vice presidents' choices are picked before, and it's just sort of a big rollout party for the team. One thing to keep your eyes on that's still interesting is which candidate gets a bigger applause. Will Ryan get more of a thunderous ovation than, say, Mitt Romney does? Or will Hillary Clinton get more cheers than Barack Obama? So everybody's now, TV viewers, people look for a lot of body language and little cues to things because the script is very, very scripted.
Well, let's listen to a quick soundbite from Patrick Buchanan at the 1992 GOP convention.
The agenda that Clinton and Clinton would impose on America: abortion on demand, a litmus test for the Supreme Court, homosexual rights, discrimination against religious schools, women in combat units. That's change, all right. But that's not the kind of change America needs. It's not the kind of change America wants.
Now, I think he probably went off script a little in that soundbite. What was the fallout from that?
Well, and it was a problem for George Bush at the time, because Buchanan kind of stole the day, red meat language, kind of a pitchfork attitude there, and it turned a lot of people off to the Republicanism. It was too much of a stolen moment. And you see this year the Republican Party in Tampa not wanting Sarah Palin to give a speech. If she was there, there would be so much media attention, and if she went off the reservation or went rogue, as she likes to say, it would dominate the news cycle. So you have to really keep your people in line. And one of the dangers is, say, Chris Christie giving a speech in Tampa. If that gets more media attention than Mitt Romney's speech, it could cause trouble for Romney. So it's all a high wire balancing act, but they try to make it about as error-free as possible.
Well, let's listen to speaking of Sarah Palin, let's listen to a soundbite from her at the 2008 GOP convention.
I love those hockey moms. You know, they say the difference between a hockey mom and a pit bull? Lipstick.
So I think that was a big moment. Why was that a turning point?
Well, first off, she was really being introduced for the first time, and there was a lot of speculation how she would do, and she hit a home run as a speech because that line you just played, there was a lot of humor to it. The problem was for Sarah Palin, she didn't wear well after that. She had kind of her grand moment, and a month later saying the same type of Alaska jokes that she had a handful of them. They became very stale, and during the debates, she was very wobbly and seemed unprepared, meaning somebody like Ryan may give a very dramatic and good speech, but he could end up, messing up when it comes to the debate or comes to journalists really drilling on them. This is a performance that's going on here. These politicians are performing. They have teleprompters. They're rehearsing this a great deal. And just like a Broadway play, the key is not to flub.
You have to own the stage. Now, you say that the 1992 Democratic Convention was where Bill Clinton, he was nominated. It might have been something of a turning point when it comes to optics. Why was that?
Well, I do. I think Clinton Gore did a miraculous job at the convention. They really created a spirit of a kind of a generational swell, that this was going to be a new era. Remember, the Soviet Union had broken up in '91. The Cold War was declared over, and there was a kind of Kennedy aura of a new generation taking control of the Democratic Party, new Democrats. But also, this year's convention with Barack Obama, one of the themes is going to be John F. Kennedy. And the American public still is in love with JFK. I would say JFK and Ronald Reagan will be the two big figures. The ghost of them will be lingering in both of these conventions this year. They're the two presidents people seem not to get tired of in the Democratic Party or with Reagan with the Republicans.
It's true, iconic, and FDR too, I would say, on the Democratic side. The last question, the 1980 Democratic Convention was a disaster. You had Ted Kennedy, Senator Kennedy, who was running against Jimmy Carter, who was an incumbent. Did the dissension in the ranks actually help Ronald Reagan win the presidency? I
think so. Remember, Ted Kennedy challenged sitting president Jimmy Carter. It was very unusual. Carter beat him, but there was that very awkward moment when Kennedy seemingly wouldn't shake, or for some reason, Jimmy Carter's hand, and that became what we saw over and over again, dissension in the ranks. You won't see that happening. Joe Biden and Barack Obama are going to be hugging each other, and every Democrat's going to embrace Barack Obama because of the memory of that. An awkward moment like that, for example, if Rick Santorum won't shake Mitt Romney's hand, and there's suddenly a video clip of that, it'll steal away from the speech or speeches, and it'll become the talk of the nation.
For sure. It's why party discipline is so important. Thank you so much for coming in and sharing us those nuggets from history. That's historian Douglas Brinkley. And after the break, there are many things about the political process that Brett Ehrlich would like to see changed, just not at the expense of his couch time.